Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Ultimate Ag Farm Legacy webinar. David and I are really excited to have you join us for this session. And we're just going to go through a basic overview of the new service line, our new consulting line that we've set up together as Farm Succession Coordinators and operating coaches to help your farm.
So the biggest reason why we started this back last year is we've been doing a lot of the work already. So we decided to go and get certified through the International Farm Transition Network. And we're certified as Farm Succession Coordinators. As you can see, we are coming into a time where there's a lot of people getting close to the point of wanting to retire and wanting to succeed it down into the next generation. And we are here to be able to make sure that the ideas are all mapped out and processed and moved along as the owning generation would like to see it. And we expect to see that almost 50% of the current farming population will be at retirement or going through retirement phases in the next 10 years.
So the backstory of Ultimate Ag really brings to light the values that David has set up for his company over the years, which is all centered in relationship building, getting to know people one-on-one, and assuring that values are aligned. So one of the unique propositions that we bring to all of you is that we are farmers ourselves. We both grew up on farms. David is transitioning into his family farm right now as leadership, and I'm transitioning into my family farm in leadership now. So looking ahead, as we live this ourselves, as we serve other families, and as we begin to work with more and more families over time, the biggest thing that we're really looking for in the future is honoring a legacy that helps to ensure that farms are thriving and not having to sell out or compromise from what they were built on and what their foundation is set to be. So over time, our goal is to align values, focus on what your legacy has been and what you want it to be, and really setting a pathway that is comfortable for your family or your team, if this isn't going to be a family specific process, by understanding your history, where you've been, looking at your current assets and the current culture and status of your farm, and looking at where do you want to go in the future, whether it's the cultural things that are kind of intangible, how does your farm team function, or maybe it's more specific hands-on upgrading equipment, changing technology over, and really propelling your family into the future where future generations can live successfully and still hold on to what a lot of us see as a healthy family farm.
One of our biggest things is we like and know that most farms like to keep things close to their heart. So our code of conduct obviously starts with confidential meetings and privacy for all of your information. We understand that there's going to be differences in every operation. So the goal is to be able to take in what you want and be able to put it down on paper for you and you only. We will bring some of our ideas with and also open it up to our trusted partners at this time. And these are people that we trust with our information. And we would hope that if you also are looking for someone that you could trust, that you would either work with them or if you have your own people, that's great too. Um, we we look for commitment to growth work being getting some of the paperwork done. It's not the funnest thing to do, but it definitely paints a really good picture of what can be done while moving forward. And at last but not least is be open to something completely new that we can help you uh, thrive while moving into the successing generation and forward.
So we want to take a couple of minutes here to go over our process and what makes it unique. As David mentioned, we are certified through IFTN as Farm Succession Coordinators. But beyond that, both of us also have training as facilitators for business development and other kinds of planning processes. So over time, this is the 5-step process that David and I have put together to help teams move from point A to point B, or individuals, if there's ever a case where we might just be working with 1 or 2 people and it's a smaller group scenario. So the first thing that you'll experience working with us is a consultation, which looks like one-on-one interviews. Probably going to be with me, but it might be with David depending on the circumstances, where we just take an hour or 2, or maybe more if the time is needed, to get to know you as an individual, as well as other important people that are going to be involved in the process. And this part of the process sometimes seems unnecessary and a little bit long-winded, but as we get into the rest of the process, everybody's all of the sudden, it's like the puzzle pieces click together in understanding the importance and the value of pulling out the stories, the concerns, the celebrations, the visions for victory that every individual has as we start coming back together as a group. The second part of our process, we call it an assessment, which is a little bit intimidating of a term, but really what we're looking at is, instead of individually now, what are the collective strengths, the collective culture, the collective vision for the future? Ultimately, making a decision about where are you right now in this moment? What's your readiness to move forward? And from where do we take the first steps? How big is the first step, or how small is it? And how do we stay true to where you have been if there are some different values and historical perspectives that you'd like, some heritage that you'd like to hang on to throughout the process? The third step in our process is a plan of action, and we call this phase participatory planning. So instead of us gathering information about you, leaving and going to make a plan about you without you, we include you in the whole process. So we've taken time to get to know you. We've taken time to get to know your farm. We want you to be as involved in the planning process as we are. So instead of us telling you what you should do, we take you through a process that actually allows you to explore new and unique ideas on your own, but with us there to guide the process each step of the way, making sure that you feel like there are milestones we're going to hit. There are daily or weekly or monthly tasks that different people are responsible for. And it also helps us share the air, as we say, so that everybody in the group has a voice and shares a perspective. But we also come back to consensus and resolve, where maybe not every idea is the idea we will do or implement, but at least it was expressed and acknowledged, and the group respected that person's time and energy to share. Step 4 looks like implementation and coaching. So it ultimately is project management. So David and I can walk along you as much or as little as you would like as you're actually implementing the plan of action that was just developed. My strengths lie more in the task lists that come with the plan of action, and any other family dynamics or team dynamics that might start to surface and hinder or block success. David's strengths really lie in coaching individuals or groups through the farm operations and farm management. We do both together, but we also lean on each other for each other's specific strengths. And then finally, the most fun part, which is reflection on how far you've come, your team or you as an individual during this process. And what we think is most important is celebration, because this process takes a lot of mental work. It takes a lot of emotional work. And something we'll get into in a little bit is as the culture changes and as the hands of leadership change, sometimes people start to grieve, even though things uh, are as they have been. Leadership is different, or people are in different places. And sometimes that causes more than just stress, it actually causes grief. So people are still here, but they're not where they used to be in a sense. So we like to take time for that reflection and celebration together.
So our biggest three questions for you today is, where is your farm now? Kind of get a really good baseline of where your farm is, assets wise, who's there working it, who's helping, who's got leadership and management, and then the next step was, where do you want it to go? So do you want to take and add another income line where you use using some of your current assets to make it so that it's affordable for someone to come in and even grow the business even more while they're putting uh, dollars together to help buy out the owning generation. How will you get there is a step-by-step process. Also adding in timelines of your total farm timeline and when is the best time for you to bring in something new, so that it's really easy to look at and say, okay, we can do this through the summer months, and as soon as harvest starts, it stops, and then we can start it up again in the winter time and work that all the way through until planting. That's just a option, but there's a lot of different ways that we can look at your schedule and really put it down on paper.
One of the questions that's really important for us to discuss with families and teams as we work with them is how they balance their priorities, where this might look like you're only giving half of your all to your family and half of your all to your business, but thinking about your life as a whole, one big circle, how do you intentionally balance your family and your business? And this can be extremely hard when your business is a family business and your family contributes to the business and you all work together. So it's just an exercise in starting to become more aware and more mindful of how you place boundaries around some of your family time, or how you place more specific boundaries around business demands and business development, which leads us into a lot of conversations between different generations or different groups of people on a farm team about placement in leadership roles. Like, is someone seen as a default in a leadership role when they might not fit a specific role as well as a different role, just because of where they fall in the line of siblings or how close they live to the farm or something like that. So really starting to explore intentionality and your farm and family business by design instead of just by happenstance or default. So thinking through things a little bit differently by exploring boundaries between what is family without farm and then what is your farm business separate from the family.
The next step that we're going to look at is a pretty critical step for the owning generation. How they plan on passing things along. What are the buckets the main buckets that they have set up already, basically putting it down on paper so that everyone understands what's going on, so that the owning generation can retire comfortably while still passing it on. So, meaning financial reserves, what they plan on doing while they are retired, and how they plan on mentoring that successing generation. Um, the next bucket would be under business assets, uh, being anything that's within the farm that is used on a day-to-day basis to generate income, land and livestock, your equipment and infrastructure to make the daily day-to-day things happen. And then last but not least, the purpose and culture of the farm so that it's enjoyable for everyone to be there. And the last bucket would be inheritance assets. Um, Not only what the succeeding generation will be able to get without purchase, but the knowledge and skills from the owning generation from multiple years of work on the farm, what they know their land will do, what they know the animals will do, whatever it may be. Then the trust and confidence from the owning generation to the succeeding generation, and vice versa. And then at the very end is the financial foundation on how you plan on passing it on to the succeeding generation and how it'll all look at the end.
One really interesting experience that we go through with a lot of families and teams is different points of tension. So we ask the question, where can things get messy? And I'm going to let David go through 1, 2, and 3 with you all, and then I'll take it back over for 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you. Number one being letting go versus retaining control. Eventually, someday, the successor generation won't have the ability to just ask the question to the owning generation on how to take care of something. So the best thing usually is letting go of some of the control so that that succeeding generation can start making some of the decisions and some of the mistakes, because it all that's the fastest way to learn, it seems. So that's one thing that we'll go into is seeing where everyone's at, how everyone feels, and what it would take to see a step forward in the growth work of letting the succeeding generation make some of those decisions. Number two would be fair versus equal versus equitable, and this leans more onto the children that are not coming back, or maybe it's all of the children that are not coming back to the farm. What is fair versus the equal? So if one of the children does come back and they bring back a lot of value add back to the operation, and how do you uh, fairly put number to what they brought back to the operation over and above what you built up as an owning generation up until the point of the next generation coming in and bringing more value back to the farm. And then we go into it a little bit deeper and find out what is equitable for, say, inheritance later on down the road. Number three would be profit versus affordability, going into what it looks like to put in your normal profit and losses, what it looks like to do better on just what you have, or if you actually have to bring in more rented land or more rented livestock facilities, what's it actually going to look like on paper at a deep fashion before you jump into it. so that you have a really good understanding, and at least then you've done your due diligence for that forward move.
Our next area that we start to consider is reality versus assumptions. So this comes into play a lot when the people that are doing the work day to day, which could be the owner generation and one or some kids, or a team of people that may not even be related, and they have a perspective that's different than people who may not be involved in the day-to-day work, hands-on in the farm. They may not have the understanding of behind the scenes bookkeeping and how that informs the operation. So just really helping people get a grip on what reality is day to day, the ins and outs, front of house and back of house on the farm to make it run. Number 5, we look at progress versus continuity, which really means progress would be the extreme of moving forward with innovation and change so fast that only one or two people can keep up, and ultimately we lose the processes and the foundation of what makes the farm business what it is. On the other hand, sometimes we get so stuck in continuity and doing things the way that they've always been done that any new ideas or any kind of innovation or creative thinking can't even surface and come out. And a lot of times that leads to stagnation in the business. And at a certain point, it's difficult to keep going, or catch up with any progress that has been lost. So again, it's about balance. It's not one or the other. It's how do we find the right blend of progress and continuity within our team. And this last point of tension comes in with understanding the boundaries and the capacity of each team member to handle and process stress, and recognizing that everybody experiences stress every day. Some stress is good, called eustress. Some stress is bad, which is distress. But sometimes for different reasons, people respond differently to those stressors. And sometimes that leads to grief. And there are times where we can explicitly call out the grief because we've had a loss through death. But other times the grief is ambiguous, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later on. But understanding how each of your team members processes and perceives the transition that's going on is really, really important, so that someone's not left behind while others are sprinting ahead in this process, but really understanding and being compassionate to each other as a really big change happens.
When it comes to the Select Six, our biggest concern with any of this is that, let's say dad does all of the phone calling, he has all of the trusted advisors, he knows everyone, and the Select Six in this reflection does not have to be extremely deep. It doesn't have to be extremely important people, but they can be people that you talk to on a day-to-day basis. It could be your seed dealer. It could be your accountant. It could be anyone that is a huge value to your operation. So basically, what we're trying to do here is get you to a point where anyone that's coming in as a successor has a chance to know who it is that you talk to. So if anything were to happen to you, or if they are taking on these new leadership roles, they get to know those people up front and personal and understand the interactions that you have with those people and what you do with them.
So to complete the exercise, on the website, right underneath of this video, we have a button for a handout that goes with this session. And in the handout, one side says select 6, and what we would like for you to do is just pause the video between each of the steps that we have given to you so you can process through it. The first step of select 6 is simply to write down the names of the 6 most important people on your farm team. So like David said, it might be someone that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. For other people, one person in their select 6 might be a professional service provider that they only interact with a couple of times during the year. So again, feel free to pause the video right now and just take a few moments to identify 6 really key people. Who are the ones that you lean on? Who are the ones that you trust the most? And write down their names. And the next step in the select 6 is to go a little bit deeper by identifying why you wrote their names down. So it's not like not necessarily about what you like about this person, but go a little bit deeper into the function that they provide you. How is your relationship functional? And what is the thing that they help you move forward on? Are they a key decision maker with you? Do they challenge the way that you think so that your ideas are better thought out and easier to implement? Is it someone that maybe pulls the reins back a little bit if you are an aggressive risk taker and maybe need to settle down a little bit with some of the risks you want to take? So on this next column, again, pause the video and just take a few moments to write down the function of the relationship with this person or how this person helps you operate your business better. And then as a final reflection with select 6, something that David and I find to be very important with business development in general is how people think in different ways. So we'd love for you to look at the 6 people or however many you have written down at this point in time. You don't have to jot any more notes down, but just take a moment to observe on this list who of these people think differently than you or challenge you to grow in your own mindset and think bigger and better and more efficiently and more aggressively. So trying to find in your select 6 this alignment, but also some robust differences that make you all a more efficient farm team together. And this is something that I've mentioned twice now, but one of our other big passions in supporting farm teams going through succession is building resilience. So anytime there's change in a business, change in a family, change in a team structure, there is stress. So as you'll see here, we compare this to plants. Like plants, when there's good stress, we grow stronger. But sometimes when we have too much stress, it can push us backwards or hurt us. And this results in trauma or sometimes grief, depending on the situations we're in. So this is where, just for a moment, we're going to talk about how explicit grief is different than ambiguous loss. And a lot of times when we're doing the planning process and going through an initial farm transition, there's a lot of ambiguous loss where things are changing in the sense that people are still around, but they might be there in a different capacity. Or your farm might have gone through a bankruptcy, or you might have lost land, or you might have lost livestock. So in some way, the farm identity or the farm culture has shifted. And it makes things really weird because it's like you've lost something, even though nothing has died or been eliminated from existence. So again, explicit grief is when something is gone, a family member passes, an animal passes, and we have a grieving process for that. That process is different for everyone. But the ambiguous loss process is really difficult to go through because most of the time people just say that they're stressed out. And looking at the stress and the grief as two different things is really important because it helps us start to actually differentiate between stress that's helping us grow and stress that's hindering the process. And really honoring the fact that, for example, between David and I might grieve something that David doesn't even find remotely challenging to process or get through, or vice versa. So to be able to stop just for a moment each day to identify during these changes what's what's sitting on your heart really heavy, what are things keeping you up at night, anything that's really keeping you from thriving and moving forward in a way that a healthy normal developmental process would allow you to do, is something that we explore together as negative or distress or something like ambiguous loss. And that's another point of coaching and mentorship that David and I really like to bring in and support families and teams with.
Some of our other strengths are we do phone and virtual support. So going back to the ambiguous loss side of things, I know not everyone can get to the same place at the same time. So this is a really easy way to bring everyone together while still being miles and miles apart. We also do phone consultation for things like normal GPS questions, or when the successor generation needs just a little bit of help on what it takes to get the plants in the ground at the right time, at the right level, and just using anything that I've grown up learning in the last 15 years of farming, and also being able to bring the technology side in and uh, walk people through different things that help bring everything to light. Um, we do facilitation for the group dynamics. So when it comes to that, we make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak and that everyone is heard, and it gets written down and put into a ideas paper so that the successor generation understands it all, and so does the owning generation. Remember also that we are extremely confidential, um, basically closed lips as soon as we leave the meeting. And those are where our boundaries lie. We also have a resilience and mindfulness coaching when it comes to the really hard times of going through this transition, because it will test each and every one of us as we go through it, because it's a change in our life. It's an exciting change, but it also helps us bring everything back down to the root level of why this is all happening and being able to see the joy in the transition. We a lot of times spend our time on the road, so we can meet locally around our area at a neutral site, or we can travel to a neutral site in your area. That whatever brings the most easy cohesiveness to your family is what we will do.
And at this point, we just want to thank you again for spending your time with us, exploring more of what our farm legacy process looks like. We invite you to text or call us and set up a primary consultation, or just get on the phone and get to know us better.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you taking your time to hang out with us tonight. And we hope to hear from you. Just if you have some simple questions on exactly what we do and how we might fit.